Action! Welcome to the October edition of Pat and Mike's Movie Club. Ooh, it's Halloween. It is the spooky season, so we are doing... Oh no, we don't usually... Hey Pat, how are you?
Not too bad.
Let's just go to that.
I'm a bit spooked. I don't know how you're feeling.
I can't believe the costume you have come in.
Yeah.
You know, they say blackface is untasteful, and I'm just saying your costume is definitely proving that.
I'm sorry, man. I couldn't find my Darth Vader mask anywhere.
No,
I had to improvise.
We're actually not in costume, nor are we even recording this on Halloween, but you'll be
Nor
hearing
are we
it on
even in
Halloween.
clothes, Mike.
I'm in clothes, you're not, which is highly unprofessional, but here we are.
Oh, sorry.
No, you look great. You actually look really good, man. You've been working out.
Yeah, I've been working out on getting the heebie-jeebies on.
Well, you know how we can get the heebie-jeebies on? By
how?
watching one of the most iconic... We'll talk about this. I guess it's a horror, maybe more of a thriller.
Glitter starring Mariah Carey.
No, we are doing Psycho by Alfred Hitchcock.
Oh my gosh.
Here we have a quiet little motel, when in fact it has now become known as the scene of the crime.
You have a vacancy?
Oh, we have 12 vacancies.
You know, this is the first place that looks like it's hiding from the world.
I think that we're all in our private traps, clamped in them.
All right, Pat. Psycho was released in 1960. That is 64 years ago, Nintendo 64. It was directed by the man, the myth, the legend, Alfred Hitchcock. The tagline, which again, I think I brought this up last time, how the taglines are... Like, I get them off Letterboxd, and I don't know where they're, like, scraping the data for the taglines, because the tagline on Letterboxd for this is, a new and altogether different screen excitement.
Well, that's definitely out of date by today's standards.
Yeah. And the description is, when larcenous real estate clerk Marion Crane goes on the lam with a wad of cash and hopes of starting a new life, she ends up at the notorious Bates Motel, where manager Norman Bates cares for his housebound mother. Now, why am I talking about the mother with a wink? Maybe we'll reveal that later. Pat, overall thoughts on this one?
Well, I've got two things to admit. Number one...
Don't say, I actually didn't watch it.
Well... Look, unfortunately, I did watch it. No, not unfortunately. However, the first thing I have to admit is, Mike, going into this, I thought I knew the whole movie just from like pop culture references and stuff. Because like everyone has referenced, the shower scene in Psycho.
Well, I was going to get to that. Like there's a scene in The Simpsons, Maggie Simpson hits Homer over the head, and it's the same scene.
I was going to say, was that your introduction?
Yeah, I believe so. Yes.
Same.
But please go on. Sorry.
Exact same. Yeah, like some movies and shows have referenced, the ending with the mother, so I just kind of assumed that like I'd be able to just kind of go in, just know exactly what was going to happen and just have it just feel normal. But it didn't really start to feel like Psycho until maybe like 30, 40 minutes in. So I was very wrong. Also, the other thing I have to admit is, while I haven't seen Psycho or any other Alfred Hitchcock movie, I have seen the biopic Hitchcock, which is about making Psycho.
Really?
Yeah.
And when did that come out?
2012, 2013.
Okay, so it's recent-ish compared to this. So like, what did that give you any insights to the movie?
Yeah, so like basically in Hitchcock, God, this is going to become like an
Who plays Hitchcock?
Anthony Hopkins.
Okay.
Who does a really good job. So it's essentially like it's established, Hitchcock's been around for a while. He's kind of like fizzling out, running out of money. And then, they want to make Psycho, but like the studios don't want to take as much of a bet. And so, all the struggles and stuff he went through to make it, and which spoiled a lot of Psycho for me, which is also a little bit of a reason I thought I'd know, everything that happens. But still came into it blind. And like I said, I'm still very surprised with how it turned out. I didn't expect it to turn out how I thought it would.
It's interesting because you said you'd heard so we will get to, I guess, the twist ending or just the ending, but you said you'd seen movies that have kind of referenced the mother thing at the end. That actually was a complete surprise to me, I think.
Really?
Yeah, where have you kind of come across that?
Well, it's actually a TV show, and this is kind of embarrassing to admit, but my introduction to the twist ending with the mother was actually Big Bang Theory.
Oh, okay, yeah. So do they just explain what happens, or do they do a parody of it?
Yeah. So look, I mean, I guess spoiler alert if you want to spoil a 70-year-old movie, 64-year-old movie, excuse me. But you know how in Big Bang Theory, the character Howard has this mother who he lives with, and we never see her, but she's always yelling at him.
Right. Okay. Which is very psycho.
Yes. And to wrap up her character, they had Howard come into the room, and we finally saw the mother, but
Is
her
this
back.
in the last episode?
I don't know. I think it was a few seasons before. I'm not 100% sure when.
Right.
But yeah, we see her turn around, and it's like a skeleton with a wig, very similar to the Psycho movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that was my introduction
So
to that.
she was dead?
Yes.
Oh, really?
Yeah, which is a really funny implication, but also I'm not a diehard Big Bang fan.
Okay. So I think my thoughts on this were like, I enjoyed it, and I have seen one other Hitchcock film, which
Right.
is Rear Window.
Yes, that's the one everyone tells me to watch.
Which is the reason I watch it. Do you know where it shows up
No.
in The Simpsons?
No.
Oh, okay. So Rear Window, the episode.
Oh, not the pool episode.
Yeah, the one where Bart breaks his leg and he's stuck in his room and he starts spying on the Flanders house.
That's right.
And sees Flanders like allegedly murder his wife. So
Yeah.
that is like, you know, a parody of Rear Window. I find like movies from this era are so different. Like there's just a completely different vibe to them. Rear Window, I remember thinking was good, but I just remember feeling like it was really slow, which I guess is just one, how movies were at that point, but two, also just how like the tension in these movies is built. And I found Psycho pretty similar, to be honest, in pacing and in in style. But I guess like I quite enjoyed it, and the reason I was hesitant to call it a horror, because it's often, I think at the time it came out, it was touted as a horror movie, but I don't think it's a horror by today's standards. I'd probably call it more of a thriller mystery. Would you sort of agree with that?
Yeah, like I guess going back into what you were saying, it definitely feels like a postmodern kind of movie, like with the new wave of directors around the 70s. Like it feels kind of sandwiched between modern movies as we know today and then like old Hollywood.
Yeah, okay. And I think I think that like the only moment that is sort of reminiscent of like a modern horror is probably the sort of end moment reveal of the fact that the mother that Norman Bates continues to refer to is in fact dead, and he's kept her skeleton sort of locked in the attic. That's quite, I guess, scary, and I bet seeing it in a cinema in 1960, you would have found that pretty scary, especially because you probably hadn't seen anything like that before. But
True. Like what the most like scariest thing they saw was like a newsreel of a train coming through, and they thought it was going to hit them.
That's it. Yeah. So I think like we can't undersell the power of that image, and it's on screen for a while. Whereas like I find like in horror movies now, often the fear is in a quick glimpse of something in the distance, or a quick glimpse of something, and you can't quite make out what it is. Whereas like in this movie, that end reveal that the mother is dead and a skeleton, it's like 15 seconds of just the skeleton just there, like looking at you. So yeah, I think that's an interesting, an interesting look at how horrors have changed in the last 80 years, which of course they would have. Yeah. So another interesting thing I found about this movie, so the premise is the main character, the woman, I can't even remember her name, but Marion. So she is having an affair with a man. Allegedly. And they, well, yeah, no, she is.
Allegedly
it's actually not alleged.
Allegedly through my eyes.
And then she steals a bunch of money because she thinks it'll speed up his ability to get divorced because he has to pay off his debts or something like that. And she ends up driving out of town and stays at this Bates Motel. And I think like one of the interesting things about this movie that you don't see very much is she dies halfway through the movie, and then the whole kind of movie shifts to another bunch of characters who are trying to figure out what happened to her. And I guess in a way, Norman Bates becomes the main character. He's the he is the psycho, I suppose.
Yeah, that is really true. Yeah, I can't really recall any recent movies where someone's died, halfway through, and then it's all kind of like what's the word?
Like change in perspective to another character.
Yeah, totally.
Because I think you really root for this character, and she's really because she's committed this crime of stealing like $40,000. Like she's really tense, and there's a lot of suspense building as she like tries to escape town and stuff, and a lot of people are like stopping her, and she's like and trying to talk to her, and it's treated like everyone is suspicious, and there's obviously like that music that comes in and then anyway it all ends up with her in the shower in that iconic scene in which that classic Psycho music, the like that. Yeah, we just recreated it so well. And
plop it in the movie. It'll be seamless.
She is like completely stabbed to death in like it's a really interesting like shot. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, it's funny, right? Because all the scenes where we see people get stabbed and attacked, by today's standards, not very scary,
Yeah, okay.
Like almost feels a little bit amateur. But going back to what you were saying, like at the time, it must have been a very surreal shot to see.
But do you think that like, though it's interesting because like she's in the shower, she's naked, and it's like this. Like, which is such a vulnerable position, and then she's just being murdered. Like, you don't really see any nudity, but it's like, I don't know. It's just a really interesting scene, and then the iconic blood drain, flowing down into the drain, which you see in The Simpsons with the paint.
Yes.
Like, it is great to see that origin, even though it feels like you've seen it a million times before.
Definitely, it's like you're familiar with the Wilhelm scream, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, it's like how a few years ago someone came across the original recording session where someone was trying to just do a bunch of screams for a movie, and then they just say that scream, and it's like, oh my god, like you're hearing a piece of history just being recorded out of nowhere.
Oh, because the Wilhelm scream is in that batch.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And like, so for me, it was a similar feeling to see that scene. It's like, oh shit, man, this is where it began.
Yeah. I think then we basically get into this, a detective comes onto the scene.
Yes.
Because now he's trying to figure out about the murder. Now, am I wrong in assuming, because I didn't look it up, is the detective... Now, there's a lot of Simpsons references in this. You know the detective that is trying to get onto Sideshow Bob in that episode, and he's like, I can be very persuasive. And he's like, come on, leave town. And he has the same hat. Like, I feel like that detective was based on this guy from Psycho.
Didn't even pick that up.
Yeah, that was the first thing I thought.
That's so funny.
But yeah, so now the detective is trying to crack the case, and it very much becomes like, a mystery, because all signs point to, okay, it's obviously Bates. Like, he's obviously done it. But then he's going on about how he cares for his sick mother. And then I'm not going to lie, part of me was like, oh, maybe it ends up being the mother that does it.
Yeah. No, there was look, because I already knew the ending, it was spoiled to me. But yeah, there was still a part of me wondering, oh my God, what if that is the mother and there's some weird, ulterior motive?
Yeah, because... What's so great about this, because that end mystery of the mother being actually dead is like there are various scenes where he is talking to his mother.
Yeah.
And you hear her speaking. In fact, like there's scenes where he's carrying his mother from upstairs to downstairs and speaking to her. You don't see her face, but you hear her speaking. Now, the final twist, I guess, aside from the mother is dead, is that Norman Bates is actually, I guess, he's a psycho and he is posing as his mother. He dresses as his mother. He like cross dresses, and he is, and the thing is, he's like so devastated by his mother's death that he's kept her skeleton and now dresses up as her and pretends to be her. And when he does that, he kills people because he also kills the detective.
He does, yeah.
So what are your thoughts on that as a twist? Because it was pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because when we see the reveal of Norman dressed as his mother, it to me it came across very comical. It was almost like a so bad it's good kind of performance, you know, similar to something like, say, The Room or Birdemic, which we should absolutely do. Forget the birds.
But when you say so bad it's good, like did you just think it was
really comical.
unexpected?
Look, again, I had the whole thing spoiled for me, but I guess it's funny, right? Because I guess the common theme is, you know, what was, you know, shocking at the time now to me just comes across as comical. And I don't know if that's just me because like I'm not going to say I've never been scared by a movie ever, but because of like the modern day, you know, like special effects and being aware of that and being born into a time where every movie has 1,000,001 effects, like it didn't have as much of an effect on me personally. Did you have a similar thing growing up?
Pivoting on that, I think that like, here's my deeper critique of the movie through the 2024 lens, right? Well, firstly, okay, like I think it's a great movie, but I think like the idea, I think you touched on something which is like things that were scary or weird then aren't as much now. The idea of a man dressed in women's clothing, like I think to that audience back then, they would have seen that and been like, oh, that's so weird. What the hell? Like,
true.
Whereas now, like, we see it and we're like, oh, yeah, like, that's not, like, that's not an unusual thing to see. Whereas, like,
I didn't even think about that.
Yeah. So I think it's kind of, I accept that part of it is like the psychological thing of he's obsessed with his mother and can't grieve her death, which I guess is implied. But I think there's also a part of it that is like playing on very outdated, but at the time not outdated, like stigma towards cross-dressing and trans people and stuff. And I think that like, and I think that's just what it was back then. But I think like this moment where you see him and he's dressed in women's clothes, I think the response the audience is supposed to be is like, oh, that guy's so crazy. What a psycho. Like the movie's called Psycho. Like it's literally saying that like only a psycho would do this. You know what I mean? And
I didn't even think about that. That's such a great perspective.
Yeah, it's not even psycho in the sense that he's a murderer, which I guess is psycho. But
oh, definitely, yeah.
And even the term psycho now is like, I mean, I don't necessarily buy into this, but I think it's it can be an ableist term in a way. Like I think it's, you know, we're trying to move away from saying stuff like psycho to describe someone who's mentally ill. Do you know what I mean?
Totally. That's a really interesting reflection. And also, definitely with like social stigmas and how we've evolved since then. I suppose really, if this film was never done before and you did this film today, it probably wouldn't work or be as like great. Because like you're saying, back then, like, oh my God, a cross-dresser. That's unreal because this is the 60s. Whereas now, it's just like, it's almost insensitive.
Maybe that's why movies now are like going into supernatural and stuff. Because there's, you know, but then even I look at more modern horror films, say like Get Out. Have you seen Get Out?
Yes.
That is such a fantastic critique of racism in America
100%.
While being a scary thriller horror kind of movie.
Yeah.
Right? But yeah, I don't think Alfred Hitchcock sat down and went, let's make a movie that has a level of like transphobic
totally
rhetoric in it. I
Plus,
think
this is based off a book anyway, so it's not
was
even.
it?
Yeah, so it's not even Hitchcock's fault.
Yeah, and I think like, you know, it's interesting because like it reminded me a lot, this movie, sort of, to Friday the 13th. Have you seen the original Friday the 13th?
No, I haven't.
So I'm going to spoil it for you. So,
oh boy, wow, a 40-year-old movie, get ready.
Yeah, so I mean, that's obviously a slasher, and a lot of people say Psycho is sort of like the grandfather of the slasher. With,
Yeah,
you know,
I
there's a lot
definitely
of
believe that.
knife slashing in the movie.
Yeah.
And then you get to like Halloween, I think was in the mid to late 70s.
78, I think.
Yeah, and then 1980 was Friday the 13th, which I think kind of perfected it. Side note on Friday the 13th, like in Friday the 13th, often the killer is the camera. Like the camera is sort of like the eyes of the killer. It's very
like
voyeuristic and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so one, that it's a slasher, like it's much more of scary by today's standards. But the other thing is there's this myth in Friday the 13th that, you know, many years ago, a boy named Jason drowned in the lake where all these kids camp. And some say he still haunts the camp, right? And then, so throughout the movie, you're kind of made to question, oh, like this is the person killing all these people, the ghost of Jason. And kind of in a similar way, you're thinking like, it must be Norman Bates or maybe it's his mother. Now, the end of Friday the 13th, it turns out it is not the ghost of Jason. Jason is dead. He did drown. It's Jason's mother seeking revenge on the people who didn't help him.
Really?
So it's a similar kind of gender bender, I guess, reveal that it's actually
so cool.
Yeah, and
Damn, I want to watch it now, just
and
from that alone.
Then they kind of ruin it by being like, actually, Jason is a ghost, and he's like a zombie man who comes back. But like the first movie, genuinely, I feel like had an interesting premise, and a very similar plot twist. I felt like, in that it's not who you think it is, and there's something else to it, and it's a woman, I guess, in a way.
Totally.
So it really reminded me a fair bit of Friday the 13th, but I guess it's the other way around. Like, you know, Friday the 13th was obviously inspired by Psycho. But yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a really interesting reflection. And I suppose going back to, you know, I guess reflecting on the movie and, you know, how much cinema and even culture has evolved since then. Something really, really interesting I learned recently was apparently the Psycho kind of revolutionized movie-going as we know today.
Oh,
so
really?
Apparently, from what I've heard, is back in the day, cinemas didn't have any set times. People just kind of rock up whenever, and maybe you'd catch the last 20 minutes of the movie, and then either the movie would loop, or it would be a double feature, and then they just replay the first movie.
Wow.
Yeah, but the
How
marketing,
chaotic.
right? But the marketing specifically for Psycho was built around, you have to see this from the start. And cinemas were saying to them, no, you can't do that. People are going to rock up way too late. It's not going to happen. But lo and behold, it worked. And if you tell people to go at a set time, they will go. They'll go just for it. And so what was a
Interesting.
novelty at the time ended up becoming a standard that we still see today.
That is so weird. I didn't know that it was just anarchy in cinemas before
Yeah.
Psycho.
Can you imagine like going to see like Big Mama's
Shrek.
House 2
Yeah.
and like you walk in and you catch the last 20 minutes and
Yeah.
then you just watch like
It's
Ocean's
Fantastic
11
Four, yeah.
or yeah, something like that.
But I guess like back then, movies weren't even necessarily solidified as like entertainment in the sense that
Yeah.
like them. I don't know if there was even movies for kids back then. You know, now there's like movies specifically made for kids, and
Totally. Like the earliest child family movie I can think of is like Wizard of Oz or like Chitty Chitty Bang
true.
Bang.
Actually, yeah, they are pretty old.
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh,
they're
like
older than
30s,
us.
yeah.
I think like it's interesting watching Hitchcock because like it feels so different to everything that you watch today.
Yeah.
But it's still really good, but also it you see the stepping stones of what filmmaking became, and I think
definitely.
that's like some of the most, I don't know, that's the most interesting part about watching it, is just seeing that all of this stuff was like originated from here in a way.
Oh, totally. And also going back to you know, not being as affected or scared as, you know, with this movie because of its, you know, primitive techniques. The one thing that I can absolutely appreciate and acknowledge is even in moments like, you know, like in Psycho, like when you see the stabbing, you know, it's very basic. The pacing isn't amazing. And, you know, it's super primitive compared to how we do it now and what we perceive today as scary. But I do appreciate seeing it in the way it's presented because I suppose when we see, or at least for me, I don't know if you feel like this, but when I see older movies and it's a lot more basic. It's kind of like a peek behind the curtain, so I can think, so they would have done it like that in my head. Like, for example, like with like the way they would have shot it and the angles and
Yeah, and I think like because I guess it's fair to say it's primitive, but at the same time, it had never been done before. And it's kind of like how people sometimes are like, some of the Beatles music is like really simplistic and easy. It's like, yeah, but well, actually, the Beatles might be a different case because I was going to say it's never really been done before, but a lot of it kind of was. But they pushed it into a more mainstream direction, and they with their own branding, they were able to become so big. So
that's a very fair point.
yeah. But overall, like, really enjoyed Psycho, and like I think definitely, you know what I've got to say.
Let's hear it.
Brewster's Millions is probably like one of my worst that we've done for the year.
Wow, one of the that's really funny.
Because I know
say
that was your pick. I just you
really-
really liked that, didn't you?
I liked it more than I thought I would.
I think
I
when-
can recognize its faults.
When I look back on everything we've done, like it's the one that I'm like that. I'll never watch that or think about it again. But then I am
Wow.
thinking about it right now.
That is true.
Yeah.
It's got the brain a tingling, but honestly, I kind of feel similarly about Psycho.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow,
honestly,
you
it's not that I
dog.
didn't.
You Psycho.
I fucking know, right? No, I did. Look, I didn't flat out hate the movie. There's
Yeah.
a lot to appreciate, and you've given me some perspective I wouldn't have otherwise had. But
That's why we do Movie Club.
that's fucking it.
That's what Movie Club's all about.
That's it.
Perspective.
Yeah.
Should be called Perspective Club.
Perspective Club featuring movies sometimes, maybe. Yeah, g'day to episode 20 of Perspective Club. Today
this
we're talking.
perspective is down. Okay,
Oh.
so yeah.
Wow, I've never seen my feet before.
Wow, that's crazy. So next month, Pat, we are doing. This is my
drum
choice for next month.
Roll.
It's a movie I have wanted to watch for a while, and the name of it, and it stars our boy Daniel Radcliffe.
No way, you've never seen Harry Potter?
It's Swiss Army Man.
Ooh.
Yeah, so it should be pretty interesting. I'm looking forward to it. November. Then we'll be back for December, which we will probably have to do a Christmas themed one and put it out for Christmas instead of the 31st of December. But yeah,
It's going to be Brewster's Millions again. That's how much we love you.
Brewster's Trillions. Movie Club's been really good, man.
It has.
Really,
It's been a
I've
lot of
really
fun.
liking it. I love chatting movies and perspective. So
Likewise, big fan of warped perspectives.
yeah. So I guess all there's left to say is. Cut!
Thanks for listening.